Elena hadn't planned to hide in the library, but when her phone buzzed for the 10th time that morning, James again, she'd panicked. His texts were polite, but they felt like hooks. "Can we talk? I miss you. You're overreacting." She'd blocked him, unblocked him, then finally fled to the only place she knew he'd never go, the crumbling public library on 4th Street. The air smelled like old paper and lemon cleaner. She wandered past empty study tables, her sneakers squeaking on the tiles. In the poetry section, she crouched to trace the spine of a faded red book. At the same moment, a man's hand reached for it. Their elbows bumped. "Sorry," she muttered, pulling back. "No, my fault," he said. His voice was low, a little rough, like he hadn't spoken all day. She glanced up. He was tall, wearing a gray sweatshirt with oil stains on the sleeves. His dark hair was messy, and his eyes were the color of the sky just before rain. He held out the book. "Love Poems of the Silent Centuries." "You want it?" he asked. "You take it," she said, standing. "I was just looking." He flipped it open. A slip of paper fluttered out, a checkout card from 1992. M. Rodriguez. "Someone named Miguel loved this book once," he said, grinning. "Guess we're breaking its 30-year dry spell." She laughed, then quickly covered her mouth. The sound felt foreign. "I'm Mark," he said. "Elena." They stood awkwardly. Her phone buzzed again in her pocket. She flinched. "You okay?" he asked. "Fine, just avoiding someone." "Same." He pulled his own phone from his jeans. "Dad calling" flashed on the screen. He silenced it. "Want to hide together? There's a table behind the maps." She hesitated, but his smile was tired, not pushy. The kind of smile you give when you're too exhausted to pretend. "Okay," she said. He told her he fixed cars at his uncle's garage but preferred bicycles. "Cars leave," he said. "Bikes stay." She admitted she'd studied art but worked at a cafe now. "I haven't painted since..." "A bad thing happened," she said. She didn't explain. He didn't ask. When the librarian kicked them out at closing time, Mark tore a corner off a gas station receipt. "If you ever want to hide again," he said, writing his number. That night, Elena threw the paper away. Then she lay in bed replaying his laugh. At 3 a.m., she dug through the trash, her hands sticky with coffee grounds. It rained. Elena suggested rescheduling. Mark showed up anyway, soaking wet, holding 2 soggy pretzels from a street vendor. "They're terrible," he said, handing her one. "But the salt reminded me of you." She blinked. "Why?" "You cried in the library." She froze. She had cried, silently, while talking about her mother. She thought she'd wiped the tears fast enough. "Not in a creepy way," he said quickly. "I just noticed things." They walked. No umbrella. The rain soaked her shoes. He told her about his mother's cancer, how he dropped out of school to care for her, how the garage kept him sane. She told him about the baby she'd lost at 19, how James had called it a blessing in disguise, how she'd left him a month ago. "He still texts," she said. "Want me to answer?" Mark pulled out his phone, dead serious. "I'll tell him you've joined a cult. We worship car engines." She laughed until her ribs hurt. He walked her home. At her door, she thought he might kiss her. Instead, he squeezed her hand. "You're brave, Elena." Upstairs, she realized her hands weren't shaking. He brought her a bent bike spoke he'd found. "For your art," he said. She hung it on her wall. She sketched him fixing a motorcycle, his brow furrowed. He framed the drawing, hung it in the garage. "Customers think I'm deep now," he joked. They fought once. She burned toast. He joked about her artistic focus. She snapped. It wasn't about the toast. It was about James, the baby, the way Mark's father kept calling about a job in Chicago. "You'll leave," she said, crying. "You could ask me to stay," he said. "You could ask me to come." They didn't speak for 2 days. Then he showed up with a loaf of bread and a toaster. "Teach me," he said. They burned 6 slices before getting it right. Spring came. Mark's father offered him a dealership in California. Elena got into a Paris art residency. They sat on her fire escape, sharing a $5 bottle of wine. "I won't ask you to stay," she said. "I won't ask you to come," he said. They held hands as the sun set. No promises, no tears. That night they memorized each other. The scar on his shoulder from a wrench slip, the freckle behind her ear, the way she hummed when nervous. He left on a Thursday. She didn't wave. Her apartment echoed. Postcards arrived. Montana. The mountains look like your messy brushstrokes. I talk to mechanics about Picasso now. They hate me. Paris. Found a rusty bike. Fixed it. Rode to the Eiffel Tower. Thought of your stupid pretzels. She dated a sculptor. He dated a teacher. It didn't work. One night Mark called. 3 a.m. His voice cracked. "Dad's selling the dealership. I don't know why I'm here." She said nothing, just listened to him breathe. At her gallery opening, Elena wore a black dress. The painting in the center, Tuesday, showed a man in a library, sunlight catching dust like glitter. A reporter asked, "Is this love or loss?" "Same thing," she said. Across the room, Mark stood in a too-tight suit, holding a book. Love Poems of the Silent Centuries. Their eyes met. "You came," she said. "You finished the painting," he said. He opened the book. Inside was her old sketch of him, yellowed at the edges. "I'm staying in New York," he said. "Garage near Brooklyn. Lots of bikes." She touched his sleeve. Still gray, still stained. "I'm renting a studio," she said. "Bad light. Cheap." He smiled. "Need a roommate?" They never married, never moved to Paris or California. But every Tuesday they hid in their tiny kitchen, at the garage, under summer trees, sharing pretzels, poetry, and the quiet miracle of being known. If this story made you feel hope or hunger or the need to call someone, do it. Then like, subscribe, and remember, the best loves are often found while hiding,